Have you ever looked at an ancient artifact and thought there's no way humans built that? Well, for decades, pop culture has been absolutely obsessed with the idea that extraterrestrials visited Earth in the distant past. In today's Explainer, we're jumping straight into the reality behind alien ancient civilizations, unexplained symbols, and inscriptions. We're going to take a close look at these famous artifacts and separate the sci-fi myths from the breathtaking and honestly way more impressive archaeological reality. Let's get into it. Here's how we're breaking things down today. First, the ancient astronaut hypothesis. Then, flying machines in stone. Third, the astronaut of Palenque. Fourth, ancient power and lights. Fifth, messages to the gods. And finally, human ingenuity.
Section 1. The Ancient Astronaut Hypothesis, Origins of a Modern Myth.
Okay, to really understand where these alien myths come from, we gotta look at paleocontact. This is the pseudo-scientific idea that intelligent extraterrestrials visited Earth in antiquity and profoundly influenced human cultures, religions, and technologies. You know the drill. Proponents will point to gaps in the historical record, or massive structures like the Egyptian pyramids or the Moai of Easter Island, and claim they were just literally beyond the capabilities of early humans.
But here's the thing, this hypothesis didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It definitely evolved. It started back in 1954 with some early speculative proposals by Harold T. Wilkins. Then, in 1966, astrophysicists Shklavsky and Sagan suggested historians should at least consider past extraterrestrial contact, though they made it super clear it was unproven. But the real game changer? That hit in 1968 when Erich von Däniken published his massive bestseller, Chariots of the Gods. He took those guarded scientific speculations and basically presented them to the masses as absolute fact.
Section 2. Flying machines in stone, the Abydos helicopter and Quimbaya jets.
Now, what's really wild about our first artifacts is just how much they look like modern tech to our modern eyes. I mean, did the ancient Egyptians actually carve a helicopter over 3,000 years ago? When you look up at the ceiling beam of the Temple of Seti I in Abydos, your brain absolutely screams helicopter. And right next to it, a submarine, maybe a jet plane, and even a tank. It's crazy. But are we actually looking at advanced technology here?
Well, the answer comes down to a really fascinating historical phenomenon called a palimpsest. This is basically just an inscribed surface where later writing has been carved directly over earlier erased writing. In ancient Egypt, recycling and overwriting older monuments to establish new political power was just standard practice for pharaohs.
So while the alien claim insists these are out-of-place artifacts proving some kind of ancient futuristic tech, the archaeological reality is just an accidental palimpsest. Basically, Ramesses II carved his royal titles right over the titles of his predecessor, who happened to be his dad, Seti I. Fast forward thousands of years, the plaster they used to fill the old carvings eroded and fell out. So, the two completely separate sets of hieroglyphs blended together into these weird overlapping shapes. Our modern brains are just experiencing pareidolia. We're projecting modern machines onto an ancient historical typo.
And we see this exact same kind of psychological projection over in Colombia with the Quimbaya artifacts from around 1000 CE. The fringe claim is that a handful of these tiny golden pendants are pitch-perfect models of modern delta-wing fighter jets. But the reality is way more grounded. These are actually beautiful, highly stylized zoomorphic figures made of a tumbaga alloy. They represent insects, birds, and fish. When people isolate just the so-called jets, they conveniently ignore the dozens of clearly identifiable animal figurines found right alongside them. These brilliant artists weren't copying spaceships, they were abstracting the natural world around them.
Section 3. The Astronaut of Palenque, Kinich Janab Pakal's sarcophagus.
All right, let's take a trip to the Maya city of Palenque in the 7th century. Back in 1952, archaeologists uncovered the incredible vaulted tomb of the classic Maya ruler Kinich Janab Pakal. It was sealed by this massive 5-ton carved limestone lid. And for decades, fringe theorists have looked at this intricate carving and claimed it shows a seated astronaut working the foot pedals and breathing apparatus of a rocket-propelled spacecraft, complete with exhaust flames shooting out the back. Wild, right?
But when we actually decode the Maya iconography, guess what? It is not a spaceship. It's actually a deeply spiritual, highly precise map of the Maya cosmos. The carving captures the exact moment of Pakal's death, showing him falling into the underworld, known as Xibalba. Rising up right behind him is the world tree, which represents the Milky Way. And what looks like rocket exhaust, that's actually the quadripartite sun monster, plunging into the darkness at sunset. Framed by funerary serpents and wearing the jade ornaments of the maize god, representing rebirth, this isn't sci-fi.
It's a breathtaking masterpiece of Maya belief and eschatology.
Section 4. Ancient Power and Lights, the Dendera Enigma.
Heading back to Egypt, deep down in the crypts beneath the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, things get incredibly technical. The alien claim here is that this specific relief clearly depicts a giant incandescent electric light bulb, complete with a snape acting as a filament and a wire leading down to a socket, and honestly, it undeniably looks like a bulb to us today. But remember, ancient Egyptians didn't separate science from religion. Advanced architectural analysis suggests this is a didactic metaphor encoding real, advanced thermodynamics, specifically flash evaporative cooling, directly into their sacred art.
It's essentially a brilliant technical manual hidden in plain sight. Let's break down the process. First, the pressure-resistant caisson is represented by the jed pillar and lotus flower. Then, that wavy snake inside the bubble, that visually represents a magical fog of water microdroplets being spat out. When these tiny droplets are violently expelled into the super dry Egyptian air, they rapidly absorb heat and evaporate, causing extreme temperature drops. So, they weren't harnessing electricity at all. They were mastering the physics of phase transition to create artificial cold, and they turned that incredible engineering achievement into a deity. How cool is that?
Section 5. Messages to the Gods, the mystery of the Nazca Lines.
Now, let's move over to the arid deserts of Peru to look at some massive geoglyphs that have absolutely baffled people for decades. The ancient Nazca people carved enormous shapes, spiders, monkeys, spirals, and miles of straight lines right into the desert floor. The big question is, why draw gigantic geoglyphs if you can only fully see them from hundreds of feet in the sky? The ancient astronaut theory seized on this right away, suggesting these were signals for flying machines or even landing strips for extraterrestrial spacecraft.
But let's look at the actual evidence here. First off, we can pretty easily dismiss the dirt runways theory, because really, would advanced interstellar spacecraft need dirt runways? While early researchers like Maria Ricci thought they were massive astronomical observatories tracking solar cycles, modern archaeological studies led by researchers like Johann Reinhardt strongly point to complex ritual pathways. The Nazca Desert gets maybe 20 minutes of rain a year, so water was absolutely precious. These geoglyphs were likely water cult ritual paths. People would physically walk these giant shapes in massive processions, imploring the heavens for rain, and they mapped them out using incredible pre-Columbian mathematics right there on the ground. No aerial assistance needed whatsoever.
Section 6. Human ingenuity, not aliens.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, we really need to step back and look at what we've uncovered. The Abydos glyphs aren't helicopters. They're a fascinating lesson in overlapping texts and the passage of time. Pakal's lid isn't a rocket. It's a profound map of the Maya cosmos. The Dendera is an engineering manual for evaporative cooling disguised as myth. And the Nazca lines? They're massive, religious prayers for water. Do you see the pattern? Every single time we replace the pop culture alien myth with the actual historical reality, we uncover a much deeper, far more impressive truth about early human engineering, mathematics, and sacred art. And this brings us perfectly to astrophysicist Carl Sagan's ultimate conclusion. Now, even though he initially suggested we should keep an open mind to paleocontact, he later concluded that in the long litany of ancient astronaut pop archaeology, the claims always fall apart under scrutiny. They have perfectly reasonable alternative explanations, they've been misreported, or they're just simple prevarications. It is so absolutely crucial that we critically examine these artifacts within their actual cultural and archaeological context, rather than just immediately jumping to the most sensational sci-fi explanation. So, I want to leave you with this final thought to really ponder. When we look at a Maya carving and immediately see a rocket ship, or we look at an Egyptian relief and see a light bulb, are we really seeing the past? Or are we just looking into a mirror, projecting our own modern technological biases onto ancient cultures? When we attribute these incredible wonders to space visitors, we are radically underestimating the sheer brilliance and ingenuity of our own human ancestors. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and always keep questioning what you see.